Good evening. The time is 5:03 p.m. Chairwoman Oliver is having technical difficulties. You will be signing back in. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Hello again. I just wanted to give an update. Councilwoman Oliver is switching devices, and so she should be on shortly.
Thanks. Okay. How's everybody? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm ready. Had some computer difficulties. Oh my,
Madam Chair, you may begin when you're ready.
okay, this Teams thing just popped up. Oh my God. There we go. Okay, first of all, I'd like to apologize for the delay. This meeting is now called to order. This is Public Works Transportation meeting. Today is May the 23rd. I'm the chair, council members, Anthony Almer, the 3rd District, and at this time, I will call the roll for the members of the committee first. We have Loretta Walsh. Okay, next we have Linda Gray.
Present.
Next we have Nathan Fields.
Present.
Field, I'm sorry. Next we have Vegeta Fields.
Present.
Councilmember Vegeta Fields, Councilman member Nathan Fields, and Councilwoman Linda Gray, all are present. And next we have Councilmember James Spadola.
Present.
Next, we have President Ernest Trippy Congo.
Here.
Okay. As a friendly reminder, only members of the committee should be making motions. Are there any other members on the Zoom besides council committee members?
Yes, Councilman Yolanda McCoy, 6th District.
Councilman Mills as well at large. Thank you.
Okay. With that being said, now we're going to get started with the agenda, and I'm going to go a little out of term because Director Brett has something to do. So we're going to let Brett Turner go first with his presentation regarding the vehicle booting. Mr. Taylor, you on the line?
I am.
Okay, Brett, you may begin.
Good evening. I don't have a formal presentation to provide tonight. However, I do have, we're here with the opportunity to answer any questions that you may have. I want to just give you an overview of it. But we also have Melva Alvarenga from Paylock and Tom Kinney from Paylock. Paylock is a third-party vendor with the city. They provide the services, equipment, and the services to collect payments for booting. So if there's any technical questions with respect to how we handle data or how we handle the release of boots, they're certainly here to answer questions. As you know, parking is always a complicated issue throughout the city. Under our current legislation, cars that have more than $200 in outstanding parking fines may be subject to a boot. A boot is something that is placed on a wheel of a car in order to immobilize it. This particular piece of equipment is available to be released upon payment of the tickets, the outstanding tickets, and Paylock is the one that facilitates that. There is a telephone number where you can call and make the payment and they provide you with a release code so that you can remove the boot. The boot then can be delivered back to the city county building and turned into, generally speaking, the security guards generally take that. We use booting as an opportunity for us to secure vehicles in order for to have drivers go ahead and pay any of the outstanding tickets that are there. If a boot stays on too long, generally speaking, I think the code says 48 hours. The car may be subject to a tow. We currently use city towing services as part of our towing contract. That towing contract is rebid every year. We'll be coming up on the city towing rebidding sometime in August. For it usually takes a couple months for us to go ahead and rebid that for a November start date. Paylock has been a long-term provider for us. We're currently under, I believe, a multi-year agreement with Paylock, and they provided us great service. No one likes to get a boot, plain and simple. No one likes to get a parking ticket. We do this in order to make sure that cars do not remain stationary, particularly abandoned vehicles. Sometimes we will take and either tow an abandoned vehicle, or we may boot an abandoned vehicle. Also, if we discover, what happens is we have vans that travel through the city. Those vans have a remote sensor on it that reads license plates. Those license plates come up in our system, and if we determine that they are over the threshold, then a boot will be placed on that vehicle. We do this in order to ensure that we have, and this is true with parking tickets, towing, anything, is to make sure that we have an exchange of vehicles in a particular area in order to facilitate, say, commercial vendors. That allows people to come in and come out of commercial establishments. Likewise, we have limited parking, particularly in our more dense areas, residential areas, and we have to make sure that residents of those areas get an opportunity to park in spots that are close to their homes. So again, this is just another tool in terms of our parking enforcement that we utilize. We do about 1,600 boots a year. The question is, how often can we tour around the city? We do have, I believe, 2 vans currently that tour around the city to determine where these cars are located. So, it's not we're out having Prios, boot cars, or having a lot of surveillance going on in the city. It's a matter of where our cycles are and what our routes are. So with that, I think I just want to be able to turn it over to you to see if you have any questions. We were brought, here to help facilitate that, so we'll be happy to do it.
Yeah, I do have a question, but I'll wait. I'm going to call on Councilmember James Spadola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have just 2 or 3 questions, if I could.
Sure.
That's okay. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Taylor. How does it work in terms of, do you give people the time to appeal their ticket, or for it to be adjudicated rather, prior to the boot being placed, in the sense that, let's just say somebody got, 5 tickets over the course of a week. I'm assuming they would then owe more than $200. Would they then be, do you give them a grace period for the appeal length, for the time frame for them to appeal, or are they automatically susceptible to getting a boot as soon as they hit that $200 threshold, even if it's in 3 days?
Again, we won't tow a vehicle until it's 48.
Not tow, just boot.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Okay.
But the idea is that provides an opportunity for someone to come in and file an appeal. Once that appeal is presented to us, we will adjudicate the appeal. At that point, we will release the boot if we find that the boot was not put on properly, or if it has been paid in full. So you have approximately 48 hours before it goes to the next step.
So the answer to my, I'm just making sure I understand. So essentially the answer to my question is no, people might not necessarily have the time to appeal. And once they hit that $200 threshold, they might get hit with the boot.
That's correct. I think, we have an appeal form you can appeal online, first of all. And once you have placed that appeal in, you're not subject to the boot.
Okay. So, but you have to get the appeal in first.
Correct.
Okay.
That takes you off the list. Correct.
Gotcha. I'm gonna sit with that for a bit, because to your department's credit, anytime I've reached out about a parking issue, you guys usually look into it and resolve it quickly. But at the same time, I feel like there's a lot of people reaching out to me, and essentially mistakes on the PRIO's part. So I'm just gonna sit with that for a bit. Secondly, how can you talk about the process to an appeal, and how are people that get the tickets, how are they notified? If the city denies their appeal, they're then allowed to go to JP court. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Excuse me, Miss Council Member, at your first question, just say, can you follow up? And I know that's your second question, so I'm marking it off, so it's not ongoing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Actually, I meant to preclude that.
That's okay. I'm just marking down like your second question. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
How are residents notified of their right to appeal to the city and then JP court as well?
Well, we do send notifications out after the appeal is either denied or accepted. I know that this has been a kind of a challenge, because oftentimes we do not have emails of the customer that has gotten the ticket. So that might not be as immediate as it should be. A letter goes out and people are notified. I know that there are instances where people claim that there are, and it could be valid, claim that they never received a status of their appeal. And we're trying to work through that to see whether or not there's some way that we can do this a little bit more digitally. Now, the people can appeal. You can appeal parking tickets or fines. There's actually a space out on the website. There is a place to pay it. There's also an online appeals request page, and people can make that request online now. We instituted that last year. So there's also an appeals procedure and information for individuals to go ahead and make that appeal. Also, there's an appeal form for going to court request, making a court request. And from that standpoint, if we feel that there's a lot of times people will simply go ahead and pay the fine, go through, if their appeal is denied, we'll go through a court hearing. And if the court finds in their favor, we'll simply make the refund.
Okay, thank you. That's all for now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Council Member. Okay, next, Councilman Darby.
No, thank you. I just wanted to be recognized, and I kind of missed some of the conversation, so I don't know if these questions have been answered. But I know that the threshold to getting your car booted is $200. Is there a reason why $200 was selected and why it couldn't be more? If you get one red light ticket, that's $110. And then if you don't have the funds to pay it, on top of that, y'all keep throwing more fees onto it. So in a matter of 2 tickets almost, you're like done. So I'm trying to understand why the threshold is 200 and if you're open to increasing that.
Again, Unfortunately, that has been set for quite some time. I don't really know the rationale behind that, why they set it for $200. However, it was set because, you know, I believe that if you've got a parking ticket that's $40, it doubles. You know, I think that at that point, if you've got 80 to, you know, 2 or 3 parking tickets, it is just a matter of getting to them, getting to the individual and trying to get them to pay. You know, it's entirely up to, this is per the code. This is entirely up to city council that if it wishes to change the code can certainly do so. However, I will tell you that we have a substantial number of delinquent parking tickets. Sometimes we find people, but a lot of cases we don't. And it just has if you increase the threshold by which you get a boot, it's just, again, it's just further exacerbating the fact that we're not going to be able to collect them as efficiently as we can. So there is an impact with individuals not being able to pay. You know, if you set it at 500, that we would have to delay recouping those dollars, and it just puts more pressure on an enforcement system. But it does. But that number is set by council.
All right, thank you. May I follow up, Chair?
Sure.
Yeah. I understand there's an impact, but there's also an impact on for low income families who are not able to pay it. The majority of people, I believe, can't pay it. It's not because they don't want to and like, hey, I'm just gonna pay my tickets. People literally are choosing between paying a bill and paying a ticket, and then you put a boot on their car. Now they can't get to work, drop their kids to daycare. So I think it's bigger than people just not wanting to pay. I think it's more of an equity issue. Secondly, oh my gosh, my question went out my head. It was about, but the appeal process. So I got my car booted, and the last ticket that had met me at my $200 threshold was a residential sticker. So I got a ticket right in front of my house, literally. And then the next day they came and booted me. I feel like I was targeted. But anyways, I got a ticket to get me above the $200 threshold. I didn't have time to appeal it because I live here and I've been living in my house for about 4 years. So I didn't get a chance to appeal it before y'all booted my car. So there is the appeal process does need to be worked out, because that wasn't fair to someone. If that's happening to other people, I was able to pay to get my boot off because I have those resources, but everyone else doesn't. So for me, the appeal process you have to give people time to make the appeal before you boot them. Literally, I was booted the next day after I got that ticket for residential parking right in front of my house. And I work from home. And for like 4 years, no one has ever ticketed me. And for some reason that day, someone ticketed me to put me above the $200 threshold, and then I got a boot. So that appeal process needs to be looked at, and you do need to give people time. So some of the things that Council Member Spadola was pointing at, I think is so key and important, is about the time frame people have to do appeals. I think it's so crucial and important to give them time to say, hey, this ticket wasn't justified, and to go through that process. So I just wanted to put that story out there. I know if that's happening to me, it has to be happening to other people throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next, we have someone from I'm gonna ask the council members first, and I come back to them. Next, I see Councilwoman Linda Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Taylor, what percentage of the fines does the vendor get?
I'll have to ask my my staff for that. Linda Hunter is available. I'll ask her.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question, but I think that's pretty important if we're using this as a revenue source. Okay.
Thank you, Councilman Gray. Would Linda like to answer that question? So I can move to Councilman McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, this is just to follow up with Councilman Darby stated. That is actually a very important story. Something similar happened to me, but I would love for the director Taylor to actually talk about how your what is it? How your cars are basically registered, how that coincides with how we are basically getting tickets. What I ended up finding out is even though I only had one ticket on my car, because we had other tickets on a car that my husband drove, is the reason why I got a boot, even though my car did not have multiple tickets. If you could please explain that to our like the audience or whatever, or those residents who are listening, because everyone is not hearing that, and I think that that's really something we may need to look at again.
Excuse me, Councilman McCoy, is Linda on the line to answer Councilman Gray's question first?
I am on the line and I have to look that up, and I'll give it to Brett so that he can get back with you.
No problem. If you could just email the questions over to Marshall Bassett. Thank you.
Okay, may I, Brett, remark?
Sure.
Okay, just to clarify a couple of things. The tickets have to be 21 days old before they will be included in a boot. The 21 days is the time that's allotted for you to appeal a ticket. So constituents have a chance to appeal. It's not like if you get a ticket today and get booted tomorrow, that ticket will not be included in your boot. Once a vehicle is booted and we look up the owners of the vehicle, we do a name search. Any tag that comes up under that constituent's name is included, and they'll be responsible to pay all the tickets that they owe on any vehicles.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hunter. Councilman McCoy, do you have another question relating to what Ms. Hunter just stated? So it basically sounds like if you're a husband and a wife and your tag is connected together, that's what occurs.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. That's basically, I just wanted to make certain that people had that understanding. Once it happened to me, I wanted to make certain I spread that information, because even as a council member, please understand, I was booted in front of my house. So it's not about special privilege. It happens to everybody.
Exactly. Thank you, Councilman McCoy. And I'd like to also echo that, because it happened to me before, and I had the time, and I knew it was 21 days, and just running around. So I too experienced that myself. Thank you. But I do have a couple questions that constituent had emailed me, so that's why I told I would share this information. 1 second, where is it? Okay, how can people go and get a receipt to show proof that they have returned their machine, the equipment? Because what happened, she had a boot, and when she came in the building and left it, she was nervous that she wasn't able to show her receipt to anyone that she had paid for the boot.
Once they return the boot to the city county building, then they can call the 800 number and they will be emailed a receipt.
So let me ask you a question. Thank you, Ms. Hunter. So let me ask you this: is there any way when they turn in their equipment, will y'all just shoot them an email the next day, or they have to? How does that work? Because sometimes you see the machines, the equipment sitting there.
No, they're not there for more than, I'd say, a half an hour. We check every half hour to an hour, log any boots that have been returned in. So the customer can call and a receipt will be emailed to them.
So I guess my question is, I only saw it one time sitting there. As a matter of fact, the person was bringing it in. So I guess my question is, why should the customer, once you get the equipment, is it possible that y'all could just shoot them, since y'all have all the information? Why don't you have a system set up where they could just get a receipt? Is it a reason why you don't do it like that?
Well, what prevented us from doing it was COVID. And when the customers couldn't come, all the way in and speak with us. So that seemed to be working, and we've kept that same procedure. I mean, they're sent their email, like I said, within a half an hour to an hour.
Plus, we would have to confirm anyway with Paylock that it was impact paid.
Right.
So even if at that point, so it's either the customer calls 1-800 number or we do it, but we're not letting, again, you drop off the boot, the customers don't have to come in to the walk-in area if they don't have to. I mean, we're trying to make that easy for the customers.
I mean, I get it, but I mean, for her to send me the question, that's why I'm asking you a question. I get it, but as a customer,
Sure.
because I stated once your boot was off, to me, you should know you have a receipt, but she said, I paid my money, I want a receipt. So I was just following up, how does she get a copy of her receipt? So with that being said, I will let her know to call in and y'all would send the
Yes. And we also have to have time to log it in and check for any defects.
Oh, okay. That's okay. Good point.
Yes.
Another question, can the 500 fee be removed after bringing a boot in, even if it's after the time frame?
It's not supposed, it depends. There are a couple of things that it depends on. Whether or not the boot is damaged, because generally, if there's a $500 fee, the constituent has removed the boot themselves.
Okay, I was going to ask, let me back up. I was going to say, why would they be talking about a $500 fee? I never heard that. So that's for equipment that is damaged. That's somebody trying to remove it themselves.
Correct, and we consider
correct.
And we consider it lost or stolen.
Okay.
And that's in the code as well. It's theft of city property.
Okay.
It is. It states very specifically in the code.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, next I'm going to go to Councilwoman Vegeta Fields.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is, and maybe I missed it, but your systems, are they linked together with the are they linked together with the boot company as well as the city? Are they linked, or does somebody have to actually call somebody? Do they got to email somebody? Or, you know what I mean? Or do they got to fax something over? If I missed it, I apologize, but I'm just trying to figure out, do they work together?
Yes, ma'am. The city employees have access to the system. We work on the same system.
Okay, thank you. So then it shouldn't, may I follow? I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Sure. Go ahead.
So it shouldn't take as long. So if they scan something that comes in, or if they scan in that this person paid their ticket, and once whatever they do, then it should go through. It shouldn't be like a whole 2 or day week thing if somebody's paid a ticket, or 24 hours. Is it immediately, or is it 24 hours, 48 hours? Like, how long does it take for your system to say that?
Immediately.
Yes, immediately.
Okay. That's all I need. Okay, thank you very much. And that's just for my records, because I got to pay my ticket, but thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Fields. Okay, for time's sake, we have about 5 more minutes on this because we have a long agenda. So I'm going to call for Councilman Darby. And after, we got 5 more minutes because of time's sake. If you have any questions, just send them to Marshall Bassett, and she will get you the answers. As I said, we have a long agenda, and we got started a few minutes late tonight, but I know Brett has a prior appointment, and I just said I squeezed him in on this because I wanted to hear about the boot, but I know he already had a prior appointment. So go ahead, Councilman Darby.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Council Chair. I had a question real quick about the appeals. How many cases actually go to JP court after the appeal? When I did, the last time I looked in like last year, like March, there was only one person allowed to do appeals at JP Morgan Chase, and that was the last of July. So how many cases are actually going to JP Morgan Chase? I mean, not JP Morgan Chase. Oh my gosh, the JP court.
JP court.
And then, yeah. And then my second thing you can answer too, when I read the contract, it showed that they receive a 30% bonus in their contract based on I think it was based on the percentage of ticketing or booting. There's a 30% bonus in their contract for them booting and ticketing people.
That's correct. Is Mr. The gentleman on here from Lock, from the
Paylock,
Maylock.
Paylock.
Paylock. I mean, could he speak to that? How you doing, Mr. Tom? Could you answer that question briefly? We only have 5 more minutes.
Regarding the enforcement bonus, is
yeah,
that was the question.
The bonus to enforce booting and ticketing people. I'm just trying to figure out, like, how do you get a bonus for doing that?
Brett, would that be Conduit? I mean, yeah, would that be Conduit that has that?
I'm going to have to look at the contract and see. I don't recall that Paylock has an incentive bonus.
No.
I think if anything, I don't think you have an incentive bonus. But Councilmember Darby, I'll take a look at the contract. You know, it may be, in fact, you know, we do have Conduit itself has a collections component. That collections component is based on tickets that have been long outstanding, that we can't find these individuals to go out and do third-party collections. That has they take a 30% charge off of everything they collect. So, and that's pretty standard for the industry. So I think that that's part of the Conduit contract. So we'll just clarify that for you.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And then I'm so sorry, may I follow up about the first question I asked? About how many people go to JP Court?
We have, well, first of all, keep in mind that over the last 2 years, JP Court has not taken court cases. In fact, the entire court system was down because of COVID, and they were not cycling in and out. So to be perfectly frank, these are very, very few and far between. I'd say on cases less than 100 a year actually go to the courts.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Council Member Gray, if you have 3 minutes of comments, anything after that, y'all gonna have to definitely send an email. Because I have a closing remark. Please go ahead.
Very quick. Since several people have discussed that they've been ticketed in front of their house for residential, are the residents notified? Because someone told me that residential stickers have to be up at different times. It's not like everyone in January, everyone in February. Different neighborhoods have different times to renew their stickers. Is that true? And are they notified?
Yes. I'm
sorry. Yes.
Can Ms. Hunter answer that, please?
I can answer that.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes. They are on a staggered schedule. That schedule is posted online on the website. So by your particular district, which is the district is allocated geographically, so you can see it online. We do that in order to ensure that it's just a matter of handling volume that comes in with respect to that. I will tell you that we are looking at doing a request for proposal for our parking services this year. And one of the things that we're going to contemplate is whether or not there's an easier way of doing the residential parking permitting online. And the last answer to your question, council member, is that yes, they are notified. You know, again, we do over 56,000 tickets a year. We have, you know, in terms of the residential area, we've got about 46. Let me think. I'm trying to think of the number. About 11,000 residents, maybe 27,000 residents that have to. I think it's 11,000 residents that we circulate these permits to. So, you know, we're going to miss a few. You know, people are not going to get notifications because the letter was not picked up at their house or they missed it. What we'd like to do is get an electronic notification somehow to their cell phones when the time is coming up, a text message, for instance. We'd like to be able to get everybody's phone numbers, but because people don't like to share their phone numbers, we want to make sure that people can opt into the service. But we should be able to send a text message out. We're going to look at this as part of the RFP process coming up in the fall when we're doing the negotiation on the new contract. Okay.
Thank you, Brett.
Sure.
If we can have the gentleman from the lock service, Tom.
Hi.
Okay, hi. Is there anything that you would like to add to this conversation? But before you do, I would like to read a couple of things. I know about 5 people who have received boots, and they said that's your gentleman that's from Philadelphia. Is that correct?
We're from New Jersey.
From New Jersey. I'm sorry. Yep. They seem to be very aggressive. And very disrespectful. So I was wondering, is it a training? I mean, I know people are already in an uproar because they receive a boot, but it was very extensive. And one of you guys, I wonder, do you give them training quarterly, monthly, or how do you do that? Because they're already dealing with aggressive people, but it doesn't make it any better when you have your employees extra aggressive and talking about whatever. I mean, it was he say, she say, but 3 people were there. So do you do a training with your employees?
So there's a little bit of confusion. I just want to clarify real quick is that Paylock provides the immobilization devices. We provide the system and we provide the help center that you call once you're immobilized. Again, Conduent has their contractors that actually apply the boot. We will work very closely with Brett. Yes, this entire business is really, it's not the technology, it's all about the people. It is, I would consider, the kindest, most considerate way to collect debt for the city. But it all comes down to the people and making sure that you're running a fair and honest program. There's not, I really enjoyed this call. There's no targeting of certain areas of the city, that its deployment is fair and honest. So I will work closely with Brett. Brett, I don't know, we will follow up with Conduent.
Now, why isn't Condo on the line? Why aren't they on the line? That has nothing to do with you, right?
It's not our people that actually apply the boot.
Right. Okay.
But Paylock administered.
Let me ask the question. And so I take that back. So Brett, I think we should be talking to the individuals who apply the boot. That's why it says boot. That's what the whole conversation was about tonight, I think, on the presentation. And I thought Marshall asked, would someone be there from the booting company, not from the company who supplies the technical. We're talking about people who are applying the boots. So with that being said, sorry about that, Tom. I thought I was talking to another person, and I'm not going to hold up any more time on this conversation. And with that being said, I have Marshall send you some information, Brett, and we're going to go. Thanks for coming out to speak regarding the boot, regarding vehicle unbooting, but we're not going to stay on this any longer because the proper purpose is not even on the line. So next, we're going to go to, y'all have a good night. We're going to go to Ordinance 22018, and that is Mending Chapter 13 for the city code to increase civil penalties for commercial establishments committing health and sanitation violations. I think we have Mr. Jeff Starkey on the line.
I am here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I know, I like to say, I know myself and Councilman Spadola have been very adamant about this ordinance. Could you speak in regards to it, please?
Yes, lately we've been experiencing a lot of issues with commercial establishments
And the current ordinance only allows us to issue instant tickets for a specific section, which is pretty vague. So in order to come up with a more comprehensive ordinance that addresses everything similar to residential, this is the ordinance we came up with. And in this case, obviously, instant tickets were $50. We've increased it to $250 for commercial establishments. And as you mentioned, you as well as Councilmember Spadola, as well as Councilmember Nathan Fields have continuously provided properties that were in violation of this code. But because we couldn't issue it but for a specific section, we wanted to make it more of a comprehensive list of citations that we can issue instant tickets to for commercial establishments. So that's the purpose of this ordinance, and I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have them.
Councilmember James Spadola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Please, I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor. And just a little more background from my perspective. Throughout the city, there's if not slumlords, pretty close to it, that are very inconsiderate neighbors and do not take care of their trash, and it pollutes the surrounding neighborhood. And despite frequent visits from L&I, it's tough to get some compliance. So my involvement really stems from just seeing landlords be really bad neighbors, and looking to get more tools in the toolbox. And just a very specific example, dealing with Meyer & Meyer Realty, probably one of the biggest slumlord culprits at 24th and North Harrison. The last picture I emailed to Jeff of that dumpster specifically was, trash all over the ground, literally a squirrel having some breakfast there. So, the code states that dumpsters need to be, completely sealed specifically so they can be vermin free. Meanwhile, you have a squirrel just chomping away in violation of the code. And, so it's at some point, it's like, what else can we do? The one question I had about this, and I've spoken with Kelly Williams about it too, in the last, Kelly and I were speaking about getting Public Works to basically sign off on the disposal systems for some of these commercial residential properties, apartment buildings. And this legislation, it seems like it's giving that authority to L&I. So I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page with that, because I know Kelly, in terms of who specializes in that more so, Kelly's team or Jeff's team.
Jeff, would you like to answer that?
Well, what this ordinance does is require them to provide documentation that they have a certified, trash pickup collection system. So that's the extent of what we're going to be reviewing.
Gotcha. So that's because John wrote this, I believe, as well as the one that I've been working on. And so that jives in the sense that you guys would verify that it was approved, and Public Works would be the ones essentially approving it in the first place, I guess. So, okay. That and John.
Yeah, and we'll work very closely with Public Works, and we always do when we're dealing with these issues. Typically what we'll do is they'll call us when they have issues out there. We'll issue the ticket before, in the case where we don't know what it is, they remove it. So, but to an extent of what we're going to be reviewing, we'll review that they have a legitimate licensed person picking up their trash.
Okay.
We have some say in terms of how many days they have to have it picked up. Otherwise, they'll be getting 250. The other thing I'll mention in this legislation, the tickets will double just like a residential one. So it starts off at $250. You don't pay it in 30 days, it doubles to $250. So that's $500 because we have to get the attention of some of these commercial establishments because they shouldn't be on the same level playing field as residential property.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Spadola, your name, my chair had already wrote your name down as a co-sponsor. Thank you. Next, we have Councilman Darby.
Yes. I have two questions. My first question, it actually just came up when you were talking, Commissioner Starkey, about the doubling of the fine to 500. So what happens if they don't, if a commercial establishment does not pay that? Like, what happens to them? At what point are they held accountable? What happens after we apply all these fees and fines?
Well, first of all the fees are liens on their properties, and they're subject to sheriff's sale if there's enough debt on the property. So they could be subject to that as well.
Can I follow up with a question?
Sure.
Yeah, so what is that amount? Like, what is that threshold before a lien is put on a commercial property?
All of our fees are lien. So immediately once we issue a ticket, that's a lien.
Oh, so even one ticket could be a lien. Okay. And then I have the follow-up question for question 2. Well, not follow-up question, but I'm gonna ask question number 2, if that's okay, Chair. What are some examples of, other than the trash piece that Councilmember Spadola just came up with, what are some other examples that of commercial establishments can get fees and fines for based on this legislation?
Anything similar to residential, like high grass and weeds, illegally disposing of trash, similar to anything residential that we do, but it's on a larger scale because it's commercial. So as I mentioned, the previous legislation only allowed us to do one section for commercial establishments. This opens it up to all of the sections that we also do for residential.
Okay, no, I was actually looking for like specific examples. I know we did like a walkthrough on North Market Street and there were some issues, and I was trying to see if any of those would fit under this specific legislation to hold them accountable to some commercial establishment from when we did our walkthrough. But I guess the only thing I can think of right now is the trash piece, or if they have wires. Because I know we were walking by one and it had, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, instant tickets only applies to the sanitation related issues. So, trash and debris, trash, it's only sanitation related in this case.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was
Chapter 13 is sanitation.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Councilman Fields.
Nathan or Brigida?
Fields with an S, that would be you.
Okay, I couldn't hear it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question to you now: some of these commercial buildings, are they allowed to have city trash cans? Are they supposed to, or do they have like a contract with the city to where they can use the city trash cans? That's my one question.
Well, I mean, that's a public work issue, but, just from my experience, city doesn't pick up any commercial establishments. So they have to have private collection and for their trash collection.
Okay. Can I follow up, Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, you said it's public works, so I'll check with public works then. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay, feel free to send them an email.
I will, thank you.
Okay, there's no more questions from council members. No questions from the public. This is an ordinance, so we need to have this moved out of committee. So could there be a motion?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. This ordinance is voted out of committee. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Although opposed? Okay, it's been, motions carried. Ordinance 22018 will be on the agenda. Is Maribel Marshall on here to give me the date that it will be on the agenda?
June 2nd.
Thank you. This will be on there for June the 2nd. Thank you. Next, we have ordinance 22024, ordinance to authorize the approval of extension of contract. This is housekeeping with the sewer maintenance between the city of Wilmington and Brandywine Construction Company. Is Vince on the line to speaking to this ordinance?
Vince Brocha, Deputy Commissioner, Department of Public Works. What this ordinance will do is extend the existing contract 20011 PW sewer maintenance for up to two additional 1-year periods. That'll put us on the same timeline as the water distribution maintenance contract. So when we come back for renewal, both contracts will be go out for a competitive bid at the same time. There was a discrepancy of 2 years difference between the two contracts, and the contractor was willing to hold to the terms of the agreement, which are, in our opinion, much better than we would get if we went out for competitive bid right now.
Thank you. Council Member Gray.
Thank you. Maybe I missed it. Have there been any changes in the contract?
This will be the change to extend the 2 years.
That's the only change. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no more questions from council members, you have any questions from the public? I see no hands. This is also a motion and it has need to be properly moved in second.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. This will be on June 2nd meeting. Motion carried. Thank you. Next, we have ordinance 22025, ordinance to authorize the approval of electoral procedure contract starting in fiscal year 2023. Who will be on the line to speak towards this?
Madam Chair, Vince Carosi, Deputy Commissioner, Department of Public Works. So the last contract we went out on was 3 years with possibility of several one-year extensions. This ordinance would do the same. Our current contract for supply of electricity expires at the end of fiscal year 22. So by council approving this ordinance would give us and our consultants the ability to go out and get pricing in the market for electricity supply for the city, and then lock into another contract that we would find most favorable terms for the city.
Thank you, Vince. Do we have any questions from council members? Any from the public? This too is housekeeping with no hands being raised. This has to be properly moved in second. We get a motion?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
It's been properly moved in second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Ordinance 2205, motion carried. This too will be on the meeting for June the 2nd. Next, we have ordinance 22021, an ordinance to accept the dedication of a private street that extends in the northeast directions from 2400 block of Riddle Avenue, add the street to the official city map and name the street as Riddle Avenue. We have Councilmember Nathan Fields to speak in regards to this ordinance.
Yes, Councilwoman Oliver. Basically, 4 or 5 years ago, the developer purchased this property, built 30 or 40 homes on it, and they wish that it be accepted by the city of Wilmington. They have spoken with Public Works well over a year ago. They've gone to Public Works, done what Public Works asked them to do. Public Works supports their request, as does the administration, as does the homeowners association. So I ask that it be, I support it. And if there's somebody from Public Works that would like to add anything to this, please do so.
Nate, I don't see any hands from Public Works. Nathan, is there a reason why they're naming it after Ridley Avenue? Is that somebody over there, or just what the association came up with?
So that's what the street is named. So they're extending the street an extra block.
Okay. Is there any?
Madam Chair. Vince,
Go ahead.
Vince, we have worked with the developer and the homeowners association over there. When the street was being constructed, we had our inspectors over there making sure that everything was done according to the standards and specifications of the city. Everything at site was completed according to what we had required of the developer. And as Councilmember Field has mentioned, we are supportive of taking over ownership of the street at this time.
Okay, we have any questions from council members? And if there are any questions from the public?
I'm sorry, I raised my hand the last.
Oh, I'm
one.
sorry, Councilman Gray, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't see
Just
it.
out of curiosity, how much more cost to the city will this be? Because that will provide them with services, trash collection, lighting, et cetera.
The trash collection.
Say that again, Vince, I'm sorry.
trash collection has already begun. Just because the street was currently considered private and is the responsibility of the developer and the homeowners associations, the residents are still afforded trash pickup. So that's been going on since the residents were constructed. The street lighting and all that is already in place over there, and that I believe we have already taken that part of it over. The last piece remaining was the street, and there were several safety concerns and issues with slope stabilization in the area that had to be completed before we would take ownership of the street. So this is the final piece of it. So to your point, the ongoing cost to the department would be at such time as the street needs to be repaved, it would be now in our inventory. So street resurfacing would be part of our responsibility.
May I follow up, Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Councilmember.
Are they paying city taxes now?
They have been since the properties were purchased.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Vince, I have a question. So how many more blocks was added on that street? I just see.
It's the street with Avenue, and then essentially where the upper parcel of the falls took over, it added one rather long block that goes up a hill. So really, there's only houses on one. Most of it's like one side of the street is where the new homes are in the area. The other side of it is a slope, and then there's maybe one or two homes at the top on the would be the northwestern side of the street.
Okay, so you said it used to be private, so that would be roughly, if you're saying 5 blocks, 3 blocks, or 2 blocks.
It's essentially one long block. I don't have the drawings in front of me for the exact length, but it's essentially one long block that was added to the end of Riddle Avenue.
So what would you estimate that be? Because you're pretty good. What would you say is, just saying it's a long block, is that, what would you say? Is it one whole block or two? Just as a ballpark.
It's probably like a long, it's one long city block. I would, that kind of explains it,
So it's been it's added to the city map from a private development to now the city is taking it over, and that's what we're doing here. Okay, any more questions from council members, or any questions from anyone in the audience? With no questions being asked, we have Ordinance 22021 to be properly moved and second.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. This will be on the agenda for June the 2nd. Next, we have update on electric vehicles parking by Public Works. And I think Dave is here to speak in regards to that.
Yes, I am. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dave Soffren from the mayor's office, and although Kelly and as well, take the first swing.
And Dave, I know we sent you some questions over. I appreciate that. And what it was, individual just called and asked a couple of questions about some about the electric vehicles, or it was really about charging the chargers.
Yeah.
So if you can answer any questions.
So Marshall gave me that question, so I'll do a brief introduction, and then I'll try to answer that constituents. I think what she was getting at. So as many of you know, the administration started working earlier this year to try to develop a policy and regulatory framework by which electric vehicles will be able to operate logically and safely on the right of way in the city of Wilmington. We had discussions beginning last year, and I think there were some council members that chatted with us about that. You have gotten, and we have gotten, continued outreach from constituents who have purchased these cars or are purchasing them and are asking about how can they access the right of way. And so we are about 2 months into what should be a 4-month contract with a company out of Maryland who is assisting us in trying to understand the best possible sort of policy framework by which you make this work in a dense urban setting. It's a little different than what you might have in the rural area or a suburban area where people are primarily parking. If they have these cars, they're parking them in driveways. This is a private property matter, and it's really just a question of getting an electrician at your house to make it work. When it comes to a city, you're talking about a lot of different policy issues that come into play on the right of way. If you can just give me a few more minutes, I'll try to explain.
Sure.
We certainly understand the administration that the number of cars of EVs that are appearing on our streets are growing. We recognize that they may not be affordable to everyone, and we understand that, but the price point is dropping on these cars, which means we expect there to be more of these cars in the future. And as the demand increases, we've logically had this influx of outreach. So thus began the partnership with this consulting company. And I would say that our ultimate goal here, once we've completed this process, is to try to craft a piece of legislation based on policy recommendations that then we can get the input from council and from the public. And eventually this becomes a piece of legislation. It comes to council for consideration. And the ultimate, if it's passed, obviously we have a framework by which the city, likely through Public Works, is able to sort of properly and thoughtfully regulate the permit requests that are going to come in from private car owners. And I would add to this, because this is a moving sort of dynamic discussion, there is a piece of legislation down in Dover that has passed both houses from Senator McBride, I think was the primary sponsor. And that piece of legislation is actually requiring the city of Wilmington, along with 2 other municipalities, to come up with this permitting framework. So we are moving in parallel with what the state is going to be putting into place. I would say that short term, we're trying to come up with that framework by which these electric vehicles can operate in the right of way. But there's also a longer term goal here. We recognize that a lot of cities are moving towards sort of a hub model of electric vehicle charging. As charging can take place faster, the need for the car to be charged every night in front of the house if it's on a public street lessens. And so the opportunity for hubs to become a better option grows. And so with that, the city is going to try to explore to see whether we can identify capital funds or grants, either through the state or the federal government, that may be able to help fund the infrastructure costs if the city were to try to put charging station hubs in the right of way. The last thing, it sounds simple until you start diving into it. And that was my experience when I started working on it, and I was assigned this by the mayor and by the chief of staff. But the issues, they range from everything from taking into consideration the level of density in each neighborhood and the fact that there's already limited parking, taking into consideration whether you're going to be placing these permitted spots in front of people's houses or down the corner. To what degree does community support need to be signed off on? Is it going to be one time? Are there renewals? What sort of enforcement is the city going to provide for these spots? And then the broader vision of trying to balance single spot permitting, which is what the state legislation is looking at, versus the hub model, which is probably the more likely workable business model for the future. So there's a long list of things, including conversations with Delmarva and their role in how they are going to power these charging stations. The goal here, like I said, is if hopefully in the short term, we can come up with a piece of legislation that will allow, citizen Joe Schmo to come in, and we can do our due diligence as it relates to the installation and safety of the charging station, any electrical issues and the safety associated with that, ADA issues that come into play when you're putting these things, because some communities have larger sidewalks, some communities have very thin sidewalks. This sounds like minutia, but it actually comes into deciding how you're going to allow a charging station on a block or not. So all of this is ongoing. We expect within 2 months to hopefully have the final sort of best practice recommendations from the consultant, and that'll be the instrument that we can then try to shift towards a piece of legislation. I would say, just as an interesting note, and we asked the DMV for this recently, and they provided it, because we do get a lot of anecdotal, but we wanted to understand just how many EVs there were in Wilmington. The 4 zip codes that primarily sit on top of the city of Wilmington is about 213 electric vehicles registered in Wilmington right now. So it's important to keep that in mind relative to the total number of cars in our community that we're trying to serve. So I can get into more detail, but I see hands coming up, so we can go to the questions if you like.
No, thank you, Dave. So you don't have the questions that were sent over, you just answered.
Yeah, so
We
I
don't have to go-
apologize.
No, I'm just saying we don't have to go through them because you just answered the questions. So I appreciate that.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Next, Councilman Gray, I saw your hand up first.
Thank you. I have to, full disclosure, I have a plug-in hybrid. So I've been sort of following this subject for quite some time now. So I have several questions. I'm just going to say them. When you were saying that you're talking to residents, are you also talking to condo owners and developers? And also, when you talk about charging stations for cars, for vehicles, are you including scooters and bikes? And last thing, I read an article where they were allowing cars to charge on telephone poles in congested or crowded neighborhoods. Delmarva had hooked something up and you just plugged your car into the telephone pole that's on your block. So that's just one other thing that I had read about. Thank you.
Sure. So in regards to condos and developers, again, they already have the ability to put charging stations I think on their property. You'll already find them in a few parking garages that are off the right of way. There are, I will say, council member, there is a movement in some cities to encourage private investment in EV infrastructure through the zoning code or through the building code, where you try to make it so it's not just private citizen Joe putting a station in for himself or the city through tax dollars paying for it, but rather trying to nudge developers to consider this sort of sustainable infrastructure in their construction plans. But regardless, anybody would be able to come in and submit an application to put one of these into the right of way. Your second point about scooters and bikes. So, admittedly, the scope of this contract is to try to build a framework to allow electric vehicles to operate in the right of way. What I have seen just from my own knowledge in the past of things like electric bikes, there tends to be a partnership between a city or municipality and a company that results in that infrastructure being placed on sidewalks. Washington, D.C., for example, has them all over the place. So that may be more of a contractual relationship with one vendor rather than individuals seeking to charge their bike in the sidewalk. The last point you made about charging on telephone poles. So we met with Delmarva a week or two ago because, as like I said, multiple, as the state's moving forward and we're moving forward, so is Delmarva, trying to get all their ducks in a row about making sure they can properly provide utility assistance to whoever's going to knock on their door and ask for power for a charging station. And that needs to be in place in order for any permitting process we set up to be of any value. Delmarva, from at least from that discussion, they're considering, I don't want to speak too much for them, but it sounds like they're considering a number of options. It's going to depend a lot, I think, on the particular site in question. In places in the city where there's low density and there's a green median between the sidewalk and the street, there may be a logical place there to put it. When you're talking about lots of other places in the city, like East Side or Hilltop, where you don't have that green median and where the sidewalk is often quite smaller, you can't create more space. So things like telephone pole and existing infrastructure may become a more attractive option to try to have that infrastructure in place. So it's going to be a bit, I don't want to pretend that it'll be a one size fits all. I think it'll, at least in the short term, once we have a permitting process in place, it'll depend on where it's being requested.
Okay, thank you. The YMCA has chargers in their parking lots now.
Okay, thank you. Next, Councilman James Spadola.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for all your work on this, Dave, and our many conversations and back and forth about this. Question, from what this consulting company has shared with you and their work across the country, to me, it seems that the people who should have the biggest incentive to solving the problem of how can people in a city charge an electric car are the car manufacturers. And to the point that, not to the point that they should be funding the solution as well. So have you had that experience at all? Are there companies coming to the table, looking to help fund this, or is it entirely on the cities to figure it out and fund it?
So that's a great point. I've looked at, for example, in New York City, there was a partnership between the city and I believe it's the utility company, and then a third party that actually makes the infrastructure. I think, your point's well taken. I think it's probably going to be an economic question as the price point on these cars drop and the potential market of people who can afford these things continues to grow. You'll see greater demand from the public for the necessary underlying infrastructure to make them actually work. I think in more recent history, when the cars may have been only affordable for a higher socioeconomic group, as long as they had the ability to park it in a driveway or park it on private property, that demand that I think you're talking about may not have existed at that point. But I think it's perfectly logical to think that as we move towards a car where the price point starts to drop down and down, and it becomes more affordable, that there will need to be, there'll be so much demand that either you're going to need public infrastructure investment or you're going to need some sort of hopefully private sector, because the instruments themselves, the charging stations, they're simply providing access to the customer who's then going to pay them. It's just like a power bill, so there is an incentive on their end, I would imagine, to try to make it as easy as possible for, if James Bedolla buys an EV and needs to charge his car, they want to try to have that infrastructure in place. So again, by no means am I an expert on that. That's one of the reasons why we have the consulting company, but this field changes constantly, as does the technology associated with it, and therefore the laws are changing too. Philadelphia has gone through a couple iterations of their policies for EVs, and they've changed pretty drastically. So it all seems to be moving very quickly.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I would just say, David, I know you're thoughtful enough to consider this. I just don't want this to be something, a reverse transfer of wealth, in the sense that poor people are essentially subsidizing rich people so they can charge their electric cars.
Yeah. No, there's a clear equity part of this discussion, and that's a great point. I have seen there are a number of programs through DENREC and then through federal funds that can help offset a lot of the costs or some of the costs, I should say, of the initial capital infrastructure. But your point's well taken. That using taxpayer dollars to fund this exclusively is not going to be a sustainable model. And hopefully, and I can't predict the future, but I would hope that as it becomes more mainstream and the percentage of the public driving these cars grows, that you start to see a bigger build out of infrastructure to support it. Because frankly, you'll have to, or else it'll hit a ceiling at some point.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilman Spadola. Dave, the questions that were sent over, you answered most of them, and the two that you didn't, if you could just shoot an email, it'd be well appreciated.
Yeah, that's fine. I'd be happy to.
You have a good presentation, and I too like to echo what Councilman Spadola said. I appreciate all your hard work on this. If no more questions, we're going to go to the discussion with Public Works regarding speed bumps. I know that was a big thing. And the first person I'm gonna call on this would be Councilman McCoy.
Thank you so much, Chair. The reason why I asked for this presentation is because I did get a chance to look at the presentation last term, because this looks like it has been a question that's come up a few times. And what has been told to me by Public Works is how this would be something that would actually maybe a damage to some of the equipment that they already have. So what I've actually asked then, if speed bumps actually could damage equipment, then what other resolutions, what other remedies did they have in order to slow people down and to actually, really get people to pay attention to stop signs and such. And so I just wanted to have like a presentation, or even if they can actually make some suggestions on what we can do to try to slow down, not on state roads, but actually more so within our communities, in these little tighter knit areas, because people are just blowing through stop signs, and it's a safety issue at best.
Thank you, Councilman McCoy. Vince or Kelly, could y'all answer that? Because I would like to echo what Councilman McCoy said, because we kind of rode around and we seen other material used for speed bumps, like some hard plastic. It wasn't all major big speed bumps. So could you make some suggestions, please?
So I have Stephen Weber with me. He's the acting transportation director. And he's got some ideas. I also have Jason Leary with me, and he can speak to just how damaging the individual speed bumps can be to our trucks. He's the acting operations director right now, but he's in charge of our fleet and the snow operations. And he can literally talk about how one speed bump can rip up an entire truck. But it's a combination of things. It's bad drivers. It's people not paying attention. It's on our end, we look to the lack of enforcement that everybody sort of is aware of, that happens in the city, that our officers are just busy doing other things. They're not enforcing any of our speed controls, and I'm not faulting them for that. I don't know that we actually want to have our police officers out there enforcing the speed controls, but we have a stop sign at almost every intersection in the city. It's the speed limit is 25 miles per hour in the city. There's no city road that's more than 25 miles per hour. And it's just bad. It's very bad driving. I think COVID didn't help because there was a lot of empty roads that people could get away with, like blowing through speed signs and, stop signs and getting away with, no repercussions just because there's empty roads, right? Like, but now that there's a lot more traffic around there, it does become a much bigger hazard because there's more people out there now. But Stephen, you can speak to some of the options that we have and that we're looking into.
Hi, I don't know if everybody can hear me or see me.
Yep.
Okay, Steve Weber, I'm the acting transportation director with Public Works. So a couple of things that can be done quickly and easily is we have these stop signs, of course. There's what we call stay brights. It's the vertical strip that goes on the pole of the stop sign. It brightens up it. It's very reflective, so that helps with people seeing clearly. Unfortunately, adding more signage isn't going to make people stop any quicker or sooner. But if there is children in play, we can put additional signs, but I'm always leery of adding more signs on top of signs because it becomes road noise. People just don't see them. They act on it initially. But again, it becomes a lot of extra distractions for our drivers. So the easiest thing to do is you can put straight brights up at the intersections. I mean, ultimately a more expensive cost is you make bump outs at the intersections, but that's very costly. It's very labor intensive. The construction takes a while. I mean, but that does shorten the distance for walking. People do see the stop signs more clearly because it's out further from the roadway. It's not behind a parked car. So that makes things more visible. But stop signs are stop signs. I said you can try to add flashing stop signs to them. That's where some of these rural towns are going to. But in an urban environment, those flashing signs become white noise again. It's one of those things that it just bombards the driver. And the ultimate thing is the driver needs to stop. And it comes down to, I think bulk of it is enforcement. In order to change the behavior, you need to enforce this from people and hurt them where it hurts the most, which is their pocket, with tickets and speeding, that aspect. But there's simple things of adding stay brights to the stop signs, making the signs larger. John Rago mentioned that there's a little spinner that he can put on top of the stop sign. It's very cost effective. I can look into those things that again would attract the person. It's really good at night and during the daytime, so that's really good too. Again, there's little things that you can do, but again, adding more signage, it becomes white noise a lot of times. But I don't want to overdo the signage. I know it's but speed bumps to me aren't really great. It will slow down people on that road. But what you will get is people will divert away from that, and the problem becomes the next street next to it, and then the next one. So it just builds it builds away from where you want to be. If you want to slow down one road, that's great, but you're going to cause more traffic and more people being down a street they're not familiar with. And that ultimately causes more problems than you really realize. So yeah, you might fix it there, but you're going to cause the next street to have more problems. And it just builds and builds up from there. So, I mean, our fleet vehicles really do take a beating to this. We have a lot of fleet vehicles, a lot of heavy fleet vehicles, snowing, street cleaning, and drainage are huge issues when it comes to speed bumps. And I can answer any questions that anybody might have.
You're on mute, Xanthi.
I'm sorry, Councilman Spadola, I'm sorry. James, can you hear me? Okay, next I'm gonna go to, I'll come back.
All right, that was from before.
I'm sorry. Oh, okay, no problem. Councilman McCoy.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to follow. So the other question is, I actually am hearing you, and especially about the white noise, understanding that basically after a while, people just kind of like zone it out. But I was literally on Franklin Street yesterday, which is a 2-lane street, and it's a long strip where really there's not a lot of intersections, I guess you would like to say, whatever, where people are literally zooming through every stop sign pretty much throughout from the start of Maryland Avenue all the way to you get to probably about Maple Street. And it's a park. It's right next to a park. So we got children who are walking from the backside of the park. So what I would like to ask or suggest is maybe like a rumble strip or something like that. Something that like even when you're going towards like the tolls on the bridge or whatever, you go like it's not a bump, but it just lets you know that it's time to slow down. And the reason why I state that is because even though you've given me great reasons on why we should not do a speed bump, I still need a true remedy on how to get people to start understanding they cannot go this fast through the neighborhoods. I did notice that I don't have a lot of what's that, mileage signs telling you how fast you are allowed to go. I do notice that it's not a lot of that, in the area. So maybe we need to be putting that up. But these people are literally just taking the law in their hands, and they're just speeding through. And I don't want to see anyone get hurt, clipped, or whatever, because no one's really following these basic laws.
No.
Well, it just feels that way, especially when I'm on the road. And maybe that's because I'm 51 and I still remember that book I had to study.
Getting older.
Yes, you know how that goes when we get older, whatever. It's like I don't even think they know how to do the hand signals when they're on the bike. So the book that I had to study is probably much more different from the book that is required now. And so I'm realizing that, like everyone is not looking at this, and I just don't want to see anyone get hurt. I've seen a lot of near misses, including myself.
In Jersey, we only had one hand signal.
So what about a rumble strip? What do y'all think of that? Like, is that something that can actually happen? If it's just like a how you do the crosswalk, but there's something on it that would actually make give you the noise or whatever to slow down. Put like 3 stripes of those in front of each in the stop signs in the bad areas. Like, of course, do the study.
Yeah,
study is required, but it's like once we do the study, then what? Because y'all keep telling me about a study, and then it's like, what's the next step?
And excuse me, I'd like to echo Councilman McCoy, because we've both been talking about this for some time. Well, I guess I'm gonna let you answer about the strips first, because that's a
if I can talk on that one.
Yeah.
It does seem like it could be a possibility. I need to talk to see what the departments are to see if that's something that's feasible. I haven't thought of those things. Usually they're meant for alerting drivers on usually highways that comes into play. But we can definitely look and see in the urban environments how that works. Do a little more research on that to see how it is. Again, once you start in one spot, then it becomes it could spread easily. And then how's the install of those things done properly? Usually a paving contractor doesn't normally do those things. It should be hired after the fact to grind out those locations. And we'd have to make sure that those areas are deeper so we don't, impact pavement depth. So there's a couple impacting factors that I would like to look into first before I give them a proper answer to that.
okay. Councilwoman Brigida Fields.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My sentiments go with both of my other colleagues, Councilwoman McCoy and Councilwoman Oliver. My concern is, just like she said, we heard all of the why not, but we need something that we could put in place. Then she gave you Franklin Street, but let's talk. I want to talk about going down Conrad, and let's talk about going down Pleasant Street, where I have elderly people that live on that street, and we have cars, and it's a sign that says 25 miles an hour, and these individuals still speed down the street. Now, I get what you're saying. If we go on one street, then they're gonna go to the next street. I understand that, but let's put it on one street and let's see how they go. If they go to the next street, then let's handle that when we get there. But I need to get something in place soon. I think it's going to be beneficial for us as city council people, as well as our constituents, because I don't know how many calls that Councilwoman McCoy and Oliver get, but I know I get them all the time. And I tell them to call 311. So, I just think that we need to dig in a little bit deeper. And those speed little things that Councilwoman McCoy state, I think is a good idea, whether it's to keep the people on the highway awake or not, maybe to keep the people that's riding through our neighborhood speed, maybe that'll keep them awake. That's it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Fields. Next, we have Councilman Nathan Fields.
Yeah, I just want to thank the Public Works team. I too get similar calls about these types of things, and every time I brought up an issue, Steve and Lynn and Vince, I get, these are always complicated issues and there's never simple solutions, but Steve and Lynn and Vince and others from Public Works have just provided exceptional service in terms of either doing something specific that is asked for or explaining the situation to the constituent. And so I just want to thank the Public Works team because I think they're doing a great job. Thanks.
Thank you, Nathan. I wanted to follow up. I don't know who mentioned it. I mean, when Councilman McCoy mentioned about in front of the school, why aren't we able to put whatever shortage, stoppage or whatever in front of a school?
What are you asking for?
When Councilman McCoy said they're flying in front of a school, I was saying, why wouldn't we want to put something to slow the traffic down in front of a school? I've seen that in front of other schools.
I mean, we could put, school zone, pedestrian, children crossing, that kind of, signage, but we won't do speed bumps just because we won't be able to provide services that way. We won't be able to do trash service. We won't be able to do, snow service. Speed bumps are just, not an option on city roads. Well, and definitely not on state roads. That's a no-go. Like, that's not a non-conversation on state roads. And when you put them on one city road, then people are going to ask them for on every city road, and we're just not going to go down that road. It's not a feasible option for us if we want to continue to provide the other services that we do. Not to mention, the fire and the ambulances, that's a conversation that we haven't even talked about, right?
Well, let me ask you one other question. So have y'all even done a survey in front of the school that she's talking about? Because I do understand that you don't want to put bumps everywhere, but if it's a place that is endangering youth, children, why wouldn't you even want to come do a survey? And you're also putting on a record that there's no speed bumps in the city of Wilmington in front of any schools at all?
No, there are no speed bumps in the city of Wilmington. No.
Okay. Councilman McCoy.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So actually, it wasn't a school, it's a park. It's like one of the larger parks in my area. And it's because of the fact that it's been renovated, all of the kids go to this park. So what it is that I do understand that you don't want to get down the road of everybody wanting to have these rumble strips. But if we can actually start doing if we can actually do a study and maybe make it where as though just for surrounding parks so that we can at least protect the kids. Like we only do like near park areas or where kids are crossing to get to the park. Something as simple as that to basically at least protect our young ones who are, because like I stated, I've seen a lot of near misses.
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously we can do a study, we can do paintings on the, hatches along the street to make people aware that they're coming up towards the park. We could do, yellow flashing lights, when you're approaching the park. There's a lot of different options for sure.
So then what I will do, I can always, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, my follow.
Sure, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So that what I can do is I can just provide you streets that are adjacent to the park so that you can know where you should be studying or whatever. So that'll give you at least an idea. Once you have a study done, you can see, I guess, the amount of cars and the speed. Then you'll be able to figure out whether or not it's something that you should move forward.
We'd look at the number of cars, we look at the historical accidents, we look at, we could put up the speed, test the speeds that are, that the police put up that, this is your speed sign and it captures the number, what the average speed is, and it'll let whether, what the speed is, is happening, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That's all I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. On another note for a quick minute, I received an email today that a constituent has made a couple calls in regards to the city lights on 11th and Walnut Street. That is pitch black on the corner. There. And it's been several, and that's a major corner that we used to talk about. Brought Mitchell on that corner on 11th and Walnut because you won't put a speed bump there and the cars are coming down. So if them lights are down, it's very dangerous. So someone from Public Works could check into that. We well appreciate it. Right on the corner of 11th and Walnut when you're coming down that hill, which it has been a lot of accidents right there. So if someone can check that light in there, we well appreciate it. Do we have any more questions regarding speed bumps from the public? Hey. Tom? Okay, with that being said, that ends our agenda tonight. And everything that was an ordinance will be on for June the 2nd. And I appreciate everyone attending Public Works Committee meeting. And you have a good night. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Move to close the meeting. So moved.
Thank you, Linda. That was great. Good off. We have a second. Okay, so it's been moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any noes, nays? Properly moved. Motion is properly carried. Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, Linda. All right.